All right, I have everybody. Okay. Wonderful. Thank you. So with this, the regular business meeting of the Kansas City Public Schools Board of Directors of August 28th, 2019 is now called to order. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Ms. Banser?
Yes, here.
Mr. Abarca?
Present.
Here.
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 Have my colleagues had an opportunity to review the agenda? Is there any objection to the approval of the agenda? It would be in order to receive a motion for acceptance of the agenda as presented.
Second.
Thank you. This will be a roll call vote. The secretary will call the roll.
Ms. Banser?
Yes.
Mr. Abarca?
Yes.
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 Dr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Wasserstrom?
Yes.
Ms. Wolfsey?
Yes.
Thank you. The first item on the agenda this evening is the public comment. And this evening, we have 7 individuals who have indicated they wish to address the board. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. And so the chair would now like to recognize Mr. DeMonte Rochester of the District Advisory Committee. Thank you, sir.
Good evening to Dr. Bedell, members of the board. At our last meeting, we talked about the theme for our first journal meeting on September 18th, which would be called Empowerment. We wanted to stay with the theme with the family engagement, which opening up the new Family Empowerment Center. So this is the reason why we chose Empowerment to be our first theme for our first journal meeting on the 18th. At that meeting, we will have junior achievement, members of the administration, Urban League, NAACP, family engagement. We felt these things would be greatly of importance to our community and for our parents. And we look for you guys to join us on 18th. Thank you.
Thank you. The chair now recognizes Mr. Richard Hernandez to talk about tax assessments. Thank you, Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you, Board. I'd like to request that the board send a resolution to County Executive Frank White and ask him to send you any data that you need to determine whether the county is discriminating with taxes. I'd also like the school board to help pressure Jackson County into reassessing for less damaging effects that they're having right now. It's really terrible. And I'd like the school board to stand up for us. So it doesn't appear that the school board is unfairly getting rich off the backs of the citizens. They got taxed and jumped with this big tax assessments that are unfair. And I think you all ought to stand forward and do something for the community. We support you over all these years, and we expect you to support us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. The board chair now recognizes Bill Cordero, boys in their capacity to learn in early elementary. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Bill Cordero. I've been a member of Kansas City community since 1980. I have 3 children, grew up in this neighborhood, Brookside area. They're currently 40, 38, and 30. I personally have a BA in physical education and health with an education degree, as well as a permanent teacher's certificate from the state of Iowa. I have an MA in adult education and MA in theology, and most of my career has been spent working with high school youth. I want to introduce you to a book that changed the way I look at our educational system, and in particular, early elementary years. You may be already familiar with it. It's called Boys Adrift by Dr. Leonard Sachs, MD, PhD. In his book, he outlines 5 factors that have adversely impacted boys succeeding in school. Today, because of time, I want to just bring your attention just the first factor, and that is the changes in early elementary education. Since reading the book about 3 or 4 years ago, I've had an occasion to talk to elementary teachers, early elementary teachers, and I shared with them what Sachs has said in his book about the changes that have taken place since 1980. And to each of the early elementary teachers, they agreed that young boys are having much more difficulty in early elementary grades because of these changes. Sachs postulates that because of these changes and other influences in boys' lives, many boys are not succeeding in school and not transitioning into adulthood and are left as young adults adrift. These changes in curriculum started in the 80s with an effort to bring about a more competitive school system. It impacted kindergartners by moving the typical first grade curriculum down to the kindergarten level. And the second grade level curriculum moved down to the first grade. As you may know, teaching children is a balance of experiential learning and book learning. Dependent upon the age and mental capacity of the child, one kind of learning is emphasized over the other. Typically, the younger the student, the more experiential the learning should be. There's also a difference, as Dr. Sachs outlines, in the way girls and boys learn at the early ages, kindergarten and first grade. A first grade curriculum that was shifted to a kindergarten level has more classroom learning and less experiential learning, less hands-on learning. Kindergarten girls have more of a capacity physically and mentally to manage that curriculum. Boys, on the other hand, have a much more difficult time sitting in a desk as much as our early elementary kindergarten curriculum asks of them. They much prefer hands-on learning. I see it in my own grandchildren, 5- and 6-year-old boys. Getting them to sit down and do something for any length of time is nearly impossible. They'd rather be running through the house with cars or kickboxing with each other. However, my granddaughters are just the opposite. They're more happy and more settled with sitting. As a result, we find boys struggling more with the more intense learning curriculum and oftentimes find themselves being placed in slower learning groups, not liking school or getting in trouble.
Mr. Cordero, I'm sorry, your 3 minutes have passed, but thank you so much for providing your comments, and you can always provide those in writing to us.
May I give you 2 books?
Yes, you may. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'd now like to invite Mr. Isai Rojas Jackson to the podium to speak about breakdown in communication between the administration and parents and student. Mr. Jackson present? Okay. I would like to invite Candy Rojas to the podium to speak.
Board Chair, I think those issues have been addressed by Dr. Bedell, I believe, so that's probably why they're not present.
I would now like to invite Louis Bird to the podium to speak about concerns with enrollment process. Welcome.
Thank you. All right, good evening, everyone. How you doing? All right. Again, my name is Louis Bird, and I am a first-year parent to the district. I have a 4-year-old son who is enrolled in Longfellow, and so far it's been about 3 weeks since school has started, and he's loving school. But with that being said, the enrollment process was absolutely a nightmare. We started our journey last year trying to find him an appropriate school, and we visited several schools. And what we discovered is the lack of communication between the district and the schools and the enrollment process. It was just terrible. And one of the issues that we ran into, for example, is that my son, we did everything that was called upon with the district in terms of immunizations, all the records, birth certificates, proof of residency, all those things. And still, my son has a peanut allergy. We have dietary restrictions that we practice at home. And the first day of school, Longfellow didn't have any of that. So we had to have a a conversation with the principal as well as his teacher, and prove that he did have a peanut allergy, and that it was in the system, and just different things like that. And then we come to find out that the teacher told us that she has 2 different systems that she works on, and all the information isn't there, and Longfellow couldn't find it, and just these different things. So as a first-time parent, that is an extreme, problem, especially when we're talking about health issues such as peanut allergies. And then on top of that, just the lack of communication. We reached out to the district all summer just trying to find out, what do we need? We didn't know anything as new parents, and it was very hard trying to get in contact with anyone. So I just encourage the board to reconsider whatever systems that you all are using in terms of communication between board, schools, and parents. And we got to work on that. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Byrd, and welcome to the district, and we'll work on that with you. The board chair would now like to invite Steve Burton, DAC subcommittee representative, for an update. Thank you, Mr. Burton.
Thank you. I spoke last month, about the same thing. I just want to update you on the progress that our 2 subcommittees that I'm chairing, athletics and activities, and then the STEM and academics subcommittees that we're meeting. Those 2 subcommittees met again last week, and we discussed many items, including a review of the KCPS strategic plan. We're trying to ensure that any recommendations that we submit to the district fit within the strategic plan and those strategic priorities. We recognize that the district has a finite resources from government sources, but we also recognize there's an immense amount of money available through grants and other donation mechanisms, which could help KCPS implement some of our recommendations. Generally, we continue to work on the resource database that I talked about at the last meeting. That will be hopefully a good resource for all schools, parents, teachers. And then just to give you just a little overview of the breadth of what we've been talking about, I'll just run through some of the topics that we've discussed over. The STEM's met 3 times, the athletics have met twice. Here are some of those topics. First, robotics. This last one, I presented a paper where the Department of Defense is providing $75 million in grants through the first 1,000 first robotics teams in 2019. We're trying to make sure that the district has a robust volunteer program. The K-12 tennis, which I've talked about before, that there are multiple grants through USTA to help fund that within schools, and they're also willing to provide free training for PE coaches to teach tennis in their PE curriculum. The Battle of the Brains, lifelong sports emphasis for the PE program, which I believe that's there, but just to refine that. Project Lead the Way, which the district's already doing. Increasing family and community involvement, which is an immense project, so that would take up a whole session to talk about that. Student report cards, what they look like. Quantified measurements of each student's health and physical condition. Re-envisioning what elementary playgrounds are and how they're designed. The new parent empowerment zone, which I'm really pleased to say that's a really great step to bring in family and community engagement into the district. Summertime student athlete fitness maintenance, participation in the Kansas City Science Fair, equal access to after-school clubs and sports at all schools, improved coordination with the link programming that parallels the students' classroom and PE education as well as sports programs in the district, facilities improvements through shared funding such as KCPS, Kansas City Parks, nonprofits and for-profits teaming together to build athletic facilities is one example. Developing a district-wide swimming program, and also just bringing in multiple voices, teachers, staff, administration, business leaders. We want to bring all those voices to the table so that when we're making decisions and making recommendations to the board and to the administration, that they're well-founded. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burton. Thank you to everyone who provided public comment. Just a reminder to the community that we accept requests from the community to speak and public comment at our business meeting every month. And if you have an interest in speaking to the Board of Directors, we encourage you to reach out to the Board Secretary, June Kolkmeyer, at jkolkmeier@kcpublicschools.org, and she will make sure to add you to our agenda. So thank you very much. At this time, I'm going to call on my colleagues to provide any ad hoc committee reports. We have two standing committees of the school board, and one is communications and community relations, and one is government relations. So I'm going to turn to Dr. Marvia Jones and ask her for an update.
Thank you, Board Chair. So I'm just going to give a brief update. With the timing of the school year starting and things are getting underway, there are a lot of scheduling things that are happening with the district. So as you know, as you could imagine, with a committee like ours that is tasked with really reaching out to the community and being present, being there to hear, as well as to let you know what's going on from our perspective at the district, we work very closely with district staff. And so they are currently going through a process right now of scheduling dates for their own community engagement process. So this is a very extensive plan, an extensive schedule, in my opinion. It sounds like over 100 engagements are being planned at the time. And so it is definitely it behooves both groups for us to work together so that we're not throwing together a bunch of different events on top of what's already being planned. So we will definitely keep you all posted. The board members will keep you posted on that schedule, which is forthcoming. We expect to have a draft of that or something in the works by September 9th, which is our next scheduled committee meeting. Let's see. Also, I wanted to just call attention to some of the things that are already out on the district calendar, community events that have already been scheduled. So open houses and different enrollment fairs and things like that. So I want to just encourage my colleagues, if there is interest that you have in showing up and being present at any of those things, please, we do have a calendar of those already on the district site. I encourage the attendees here as well, but we can begin to do that. And then the other piece that we've kind of been toying with at the committee level is how do we show up even as individuals and being present for our districts and that nature. And so one of the things that we've talked about, and the previous chairperson of that committee from the previous term already laid out things like neighborhood association meetings. So what I will be doing is sending a worksheet to all board members. It's going to be an electronic shareable document that we can all input, different neighborhood events or civic groups that we are already affiliated with or already know about. And if we could just kind of document them in one place that was started last year, we can sort of see a big picture of who's going where and where we will already be on the scene. And so in support of those outings and that type of outreach, we have spoken with the staff about preparing talking points. So we should have talking points within the next few days that would really give us talking points for the first 30 to 60 days, the open of the school year. So we'll have those in which we're trying to get onto a schedule. Something that we'll talk about at our next meeting is getting on a schedule of getting regular talking points for the board. And the final thing I'll say, I should announce the okay, so on the road with the board of directors, so you probably have heard of the fact that the board will go out to the community and have our board members several times a year, our board meetings several times a year out in the community. So on September 11th, we will have our meeting at Central High School. Please meet us there. There will be refreshments in the cafeteria at 5:30. So we hope people can come out, whether you're here now or watching from the stream. So it'd be great to see people there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and there are flyers about this on the table outside. Ms. Wolfsey?
Thank you, Chairwoman Manser. So the Government Relations Committee met in August 20th. We discussed two main items. One were the communication protocols that we're going to try to use between ourselves as KCPS and Jan Barget and Associates, which is our lobbyist that we use during session. We also began the fine-tuning, starting to talk about our 2020 legislative priorities. Roughly, right now, those are kind of in the area of teacher compensation, local funding, and incentive reform. One thing I wanted to share with the group is kind of the timeline that we are working around with regards to how we go and get ready for the session that begins in January. We asked at the last meeting that administration bring to the committee a draft of, or a draft language of the priorities that we're currently looking at, and that meeting will be September 19th for the Government Relations Committee. We then will turn around and present that to this board for consideration and feedback at the regular September 23rd meeting. Then we have 2 meetings in between there where that's just where we can maybe kind of go back and forth because we never get it right out of the chute. So we'll take their feedback, massage some of the priorities, and hopefully be able to vote on the final priorities for the 2020 legislative session. What is that date? October 23rd at the regular board meeting. What that allows us to do is if we do want to try and proactively work on legislation that we want to file, which I believe pre-filing begins on December 1st, we'll start to do some of that work between now and the end of November. And then the other date that I do think we want to make sure everybody is aware of is we will have our legislative breakfast, which this will be the 3rd year, I think, or 3rd or 4th, I can't remember. And that we have tentatively scheduled for Friday, December 6th. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Mr. Barca?
One question. Can you tell me, has the tradition always been for the governance committee just to focus on the state legislature, or will you then go to federal policy, county, local?
Great question. I would say predominantly that's where the bulk of but that is not the only focus. Where we haven't focused at the federal level as much in years past, although I think last year was the first year we kind of, one of our priorities was around funding, and there was kind of the local touch point of that, the state and the federal, because I don't think a lot of people realize that the federal dollars that we get for 2 big programs, Title I and IDEA, are currently not funded at the full amount that they're supposed to be at the federal level. And because we have so many of those students in our population, that really does hit our bottom line. So it was an area that we had identified last year, but we really didn't put any legs underneath it, how we would do that. I think that's the sort of feedback I'd like to hear, is how we might kind of work that. And then on the local side, it has tended to be more on the incentive abatement side, but some things do pop up maybe that aren't necessarily on our priorities that we would engage with at the local side. And then what typically happens, how that works, is it comes through to the Government Relations Committee to maybe digest and talk about, and then bring recommendations sometimes back to the full board. Nothing's off the table. I figured you would.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for the ad hoc committees?
Okay. So Dr. Jones and Ms. Wolfsey, thanks for your leadership and your work, and as well as all the committee members, because I know it's work on top of the work that we already do as board members, so appreciate it. Ms. Wolfsey, a couple questions and just thoughts around some of the government relations committee work specific to our lobbyist, the Barget group. So I'm completely okay with funneling, and I think I've already done that even before knowing that that was going to be the process. Which,
you are very good.
But and so my point is I'm okay with continuing to do that. I think it's smart and efficient to do so. But I get a little bit concerned about potential bottlenecks. So the great thing about Barget and team is they're super responsive, right? I mean, within a day, if not within an hour of an email going out, they're responding via email or calling you. And as awesome as Miss Quinley is, she is one human being. And so I'd like to just, not maybe an answer today, but how do we go make sure that that responsiveness doesn't go away with what we have with the Barjay Group today?
Thank you. Are there any other questions of the committees? All right, thank you, everyone. The next item of business actually is I'm going to turn it over for the superintendent's report.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. We have a couple of items under the superintendent's report. The first one being a video highlight of the first day of school. And then I want to provide the board and the public with an update as it pertains to opening of schools. And then we will have a long-range planning and internal assessment presentation, which will be another update to the board on our initiative, Blueprint 2030. So at this time, let's roll the video.
We are KCPS.
Late July and early August is a very important time for Kansas City Public Schools. With everyone getting ready for the upcoming school year, KCPS took it to another level, starting with the second annual Summer Professional Development Institute at Southeast High School. Over 800 teachers and administrators attended the institute this year.
The difference between Summer Institute 1 and Summer Institute 2 is that this year we've made it in conjunction with our new teacher orientation. So we've added over 200 new teachers that will be attending 3 days of Summer Institute and then 2 days of additional new teacher orientation. So we've definitely grown from last year.
The Institute's theme was Time to Go Deeper. It featured sessions and keynote addresses led by some of the nation's most highly regarded experts in public education. This year's Professional Development Institute focused on equipping teachers so that they can provide the individualized, equitable, and top-flight lessons students need to achieve their full potential.
Hot up, ready to go. I got my eyes on the prize. I'm sick of feeling the lows. I want to roll with the odds. I took a different path. I did it all on my own.
The fourth annual Summerfest was also an incredible success this year. Hosted by the Kansas City Public Schools Education Foundation on Saturday, August 3rd, the event helped students, families get ready for the school year by connecting them with their school's staff and community partners. Summerfest featured free backpacks, school supplies, and t-shirts for school-age children, plus lunch provided free of charge for everyone regardless of age. Families also enjoyed performances by local artists, played soccer and basketball, plus bounce houses and other fun and educational activities and crafts. In total, more than 7,200 people who attended were provided 7,000 backpacks, 5,000 sets of school supplies, uniforms for 5,000, 3,500 pounds of food, sports physicals, lunch, and transportation. It was the largest Summerfest to date. The fun didn't stop there, as more than 2,000 members of Team KCPS got fired up for the start of school during Convocation 2019. KCPS hosted its annual all-staff convocation on Thursday, August 8th at Music Hall in downtown Kansas City, Missouri. Convocation is an opportunity for employees to unite at an inspirational pep rally type event leading into the first day of classes. This school year's theme is It's Our Time. The event was presented as a kind of homecoming for students, parents, staff, and alumni, and community members. The event was hosted by Southeast High School alumnus Sean Tyler. KCPS Education Foundation Director Nicole Collier-White and a representative of Jostens presented the 2019 KCPS Teacher of the Year ring to recipient Diane Mora of East High School. Nick Benjamin from the Cordish Companies announced a 5-year partnership with KCPS and the Education Foundation that includes a $50,000 check to the foundation to provide support for innovative teaching, educational materials, and resources for enhancing student learning. A 1-year rent-free apartment at both the One Light and Two Light luxury apartments in downtown Kansas City. the annual donation of a portion of proceeds from at least 3 concerts at KC Live to the foundation. And 1,000 Cordish employees will volunteer annually at the district and school level.
That's pretty cool. We let down time, but you see what they're doing. So next year, as he said, it'll be ready in the winter when it snows, and they clear the downtown streets first, so you ain't got no excuse.
KCPS Chief Human Resources Officer Jennifer Collier shared information about the Excellence in Education Awards program, which is being funded through the School Smart KC organization and includes about $50,000 in awards for KCPS educators. The event also featured remarks by Dr. Bedell, the dazzling voices of Toby and Tommy, and we can't forget the Marching Cobras, who kept the energy up during the event. The enthusiasm sparked by convocation led right into the start of schools on Monday, August 12th. We are so excited for what the school year holds for our staff, students, and families. This year's start of school demonstrated that KCPS has made huge strides towards becoming the kind of high-quality public education system our community needs and deserves. This is our time.
All right. Thank you. So I wanted to provide a quick update on where we are. This is my 4th opening of school as superintendent, and I will tell you this is probably the best opening as far as what's happening inside of our schools, the teaching and learning, the focus on instruction. It's really, there's a different level of urgency. I tell people it's a new norm. There's a lot of momentum that's going in, data is trickling in, and we have a lot of schools that are making positive progress. What makes me extremely ecstatic is also as a parent, and hopefully we have some parents in here. I know we give our iReady assessments to our students in grades 3 through 9, I believe. 3 through 9. Well, I also received mine, K through 9. So I received a copy as a parent of my daughter's math and where she is in reading, and went over that with her 2 nights ago to talk to her about the things that we need to work on. I know exactly where she is, where she's falling short. I know what areas she's tested out of, what areas she's not on grade level. Those reports go home, and this is our 2nd year of implementation with iReady, so it ultimately gives all of our parents the prescription that they need to help make sure that our kids are able to access the standards. And so I'm extremely excited about the momentum that we have in that area. Teacher vacancies. Here's what I can tell you. There was a letter that went out recently, not a letter, but an article in the Kansas City Star about the teacher vacancies and how bad it is in the state of Missouri, but really nationally. I know of a district, and I'm not going to say any names, that has 104 vacancies, to start the school year off. And there's a number of districts like that that's dealing with these issues. I'm proud to say to you all that we started the school year off with 6 vacancies. We have right now 7 vacancies. We have 6 remaining, and we're still interviewing. 2 arts, 3 music, 1 family and consumer science. We are fully staffed in math, reading, social studies, science, and many of our other subject areas. And for an urban school district, I've been in this business for 20 years. I've never started a school year with only 7 vacancies. So I have to say that that's a testament to our HR department, to our building principals who are out there working, to the teachers. Because what happens is if teachers feel that they're being valued and appreciated, they will go out and recruit for you. And they will tell you, this is a district you need to work in. And I would say that it has been a team effort that has allowed for us to be in the situation that we're in right now. So I'm really happy about that. And then transportation continues to be the Achilles heel of the superintendent, but I can tell you we're much better off than we were a year ago and far better off than we were 2 years ago. We have started the school year with about 133 bus drivers, and by the end of the first week, we had lost 5 bus drivers. And as you all know, in a market like this where there's a lot of competition because you got 3 or 4 buses driving down the same street because of, the charter schools segment of this educational ecosystem, the competition is real sturdy for bus drivers. There's just not enough of them. Even though we start off at $18 an hour, it's still difficult to recruit bus drivers. So what we have done is we have beefed that up. We up to 145 drivers for 139 routes. We're continuously looking to interview and take people through the process to get them qualified to be able to drive. And we're ultimately seeing a much better on-time arrival and drop-off. Yesterday we cleared at 5:38. Our goal is 5:30, and that was something that we was hoping that we would have happen by Labor Day. I want to also thank Troy Schulte, the city manager, because we were able to work collectively to implement a solution for our Lincoln dismissal between both schools, and they've given us barricades to block off the shutdown 22nd at Garfield, and Woodland. And now it has allowed for us to free up 20 to 25 minutes, somewhere in that range, for our buses to get out and get to those second and third tiers. So I really have to commend Troy for that, because that was one quick phone call and he had barricades out there, and we're now doing a much better job of getting kids home. We're not perfect in this area. We have a lot of work to do. We want information from each and every single one of you all. If you have transportation concerns, get them to us. We're trying to refine it, and we want to do a better job. But we are extremely happy in terms of where we are in comparison to where this district has been in the past.
Thank you, Dr. Bedell. And we don't normally take questions at this point, but because opening of schools is fairly monumental, are there any comments or thoughts from any of my colleagues at this moment? All right. Thank you for everything and for keeping us apprised, and appreciate this good start of schools.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At this time, we want to bring Ms. Shannon Jacks up, and Ms. Samara Crawford, who will conduct a presentation on our long-range planning and internal assessment. This is in response to our system analysis work that we've been undergoing. It really started off with Ed Landscape to system analysis to Blueprint 2030. So we will pass this over to Ms. Jacks.
Thank you, Dr. Bedell. I guess I'd just like to come up here and present on different initiatives, but we're excited to talk to you about the work that we're getting ready to undertake. So I'm going to provide an introduction on the internal system analysis, as well as the long-range planning effort, which we're referring to as Blueprint 2030. I'm going to go over the purpose and process, and then Samara Crawford Herrera is going to provide background information about how we're approaching stakeholder engagement, because that's a critical component of our work. So before we get into the specifics of Blueprint 2030, I want to provide some context. So last year we embarked on a new initiative, the system analysis. So that was that data-driven look at our entire system, so both KCPS and charter schools. So while we had over 100 plus slides of data and takeaways, we really tried to distill that down into some key items. Obviously, student achievement has got to be front and center, but we also know that we have several characteristics of our system that can be difficult to navigate and have unintended consequences like resegregation of individual schools, such that we know our system isn't serving all of our students as effectively as we would like them to be. So we know that we need to then be looking at how we provide greater equity to all students throughout the system. So we also know that student mobility and retention are major challenges that we need to address, as well as we have operating inefficiencies and a lack of capital funding to meet our facility needs. For too long, we've been siloed between the district and today 20 different charter LEAs, which has caused fragmentation and inefficiencies. And we know that if we're going to improve outcomes system-wide, collaboration and coordinated decision-making have got to be improved. Now, yesterday, we just had our second district charter collaboration council meeting. So things are moving, in the right direction in that area. And so For some items, we know that, across the system, we're going to have to do that collaboration or talk to foundations and charter sponsors and charter schools and elected officials to help us make changes that aren't within our purview. But at the same time, there are things that KCPS can work to address ourselves to make the overall system stronger and to improve the experience of our current students. And that's really what leads us into Blueprint 2030. So what is this Blueprint 2030? It's really defining how we're going to be serving students in the future. Now, we decided to look at 2030 as kind of that target date. And so it's looking at what system level changes are needed today, tomorrow, and into the future. And the focus of Blueprint 2030 is to ensure that all students living within our boundaries have quality pre-K through 12th grade experience and that they're ready for college, career, and life. Now, this might sound familiar as far as the desired outcomes to what we had with our system analysis, because it is. So we're continuing to build off of that work. And in order to achieve that, we know that we're going to have to maximize our resources, address inefficiencies, and focus on the educational experience of all kids. So what is the scope of this work? And I often think it's easiest to explain this by going through the types of questions that we're going to be working to address in this effort. So we're looking out to 2030, so we know we have to have an understanding of what's happening with demographics and population within our boundaries. And that helps us really understand the possible scenarios for future student enrollment. Now, while the system analysis has given us a lot of information on a lot of different areas, we know when it comes to mobility and transfer, we need to dive in deeper. So we need to really understand what's happening more at a school level, at a, let's see, sorry, I lost my, there we go, got it. School level, grade level, and then by neighborhood, because that's going to really help us understand what's happening, what kind of conversations do we have to have with parents to try to ensure that we're better serving families. And as we know, we want to have that focus on academic achievement. We know we want to look closer at a variety of things that are impacting that in a variety of ways. So grade configuration, feeder patterns, our signature themes that we offer. And then with all things that we're doing, we know we have to tie it back to the strategic plan. So what are the things that we need to do in order to address those strategic priorities outlined in the plan? We also have to look at a facility and operations perspective. So we're taking a closer look at facility needs and developing a strategy for funding those facility needs. And we also know operating inefficiencies was a major takeaway from the system analysis. So Linda's team, for system analysis, she looked at those inefficiencies for the system as a whole, KCPS and charter schools. She's really now diving into that specific to KCPS. So with Blueprint 2030, we're really working to build off of our past work, such as the system analysis, master plan, other initiatives, in order to lay a solid foundation for the next decade. Now, some of those puzzle pieces are already in place. We've already made some decisions, but others we'll be working with the community. So, essentially, like the idea of Blueprint 2030 is you put these different, you do your assessment, you do these different, identify different strategies for what's really going to move the district forward. Now, I know not everyone has gone through comprehensive planning processes before, so as the planner, I wanted to take you through that, the phases, what is included, and then kind of what the time frame for each of those is. So the first phase, we're really concentrating, where are we today? This is where we conduct that critical assessment work. So as I mentioned, the system analysis provided a lot of answers, but also a lot of questions. Over the last couple of months, our senior leadership team has really been taking a closer look at this, identifying and scoping out what work needs to be included in this and where we need to dive deeper. So I know there's a lot on this next slide, but this is really kind of gives you a sense of the work that we're doing in phase one. So our assessments look at human capital. So while we've done a great job of making sure that, we're staffed at the start of school, we know that we have recruitment and retention challenges. So looking in that area, facility needs and utilization, inefficiencies again, various things that impact student enrollment and retention and recruitment of students. And then looking at an educational assessment. Now, the majority of this is being done in-house, but there are some key items that we are using third parties for. Also in this phase, we're going to be doing stakeholder engagement, and that's going to continue throughout every phase of this effort. Phase one is starting in July, started in July, and we expect that we'll need until January to complete this work. So the next phase is where do we want to be? It's goal setting. Now, we've identified that overarching purpose, ensuring all of our students within our boundaries are prepared for life after high school. But in phase two, we're going to drill down more into this. You may wonder, why isn't this being done first? And it's deliberate. And that's because we really need to have that information from our assessment work before we can truly understand where is it that we want to be, and it's things that are achievable. Some of you may remember when we went through the master planning process with MGT, they asked us to define 5 and 10-year enrollment goals. They were pretty lofty. Many would say not achievable. And so what we're really wanting to make sure is that we get that really solid assessment work done, and that informs our goal setting phase. Goal setting is going to start in October, so it will overlap with phase one, but it won't conclude until February, so we'll have that assessment work done. So the third phase is where we start looking at options that we have to get us to where we want to be, all right? So I like to refer to this as our problem-solving phase. It's often tempting to jump right into this phase. We have internal conversations where I'm like, okay, guys, remember, we're not problem solving, we're still assessing. But we're really working to make sure that our problem solving is grounded in an understanding of where we are and where we want to be. And so we expect that scenario phase to start in February and go through summer of 2020. The fourth phase is when we're going to bring recommendations to the board for approval. And that we expect to happen next September, October, which means we're going to be working on this over the next year. Now, there may be some issues that arise during our assessment phase that we identify that say, whoa, we can't wait until next September, October to bring these to the board. So if that happens, we will, obviously inform you and the community. But this is kind of the ideal situation, not bringing those recommendations to you until next fall. We then move into the implementation phase, and while some of those recommendations wouldn't be planned to go into effect until school year 2022, which is the fall of 2021, implementation really does start after board approval. And that's really to ensure that we have sufficient time to plan for work with our staff, work with parents and the community for effective implementation. If you'll remember with master plan, there were some items like year-round school that we weren't able to implement for the next school year because we just didn't have enough time to really plan that out and get them done effectively. So we did have that delay, but with the schedule that we've outlined, we should be good to go there. And then the last phase is evaluation. And so this is one that often gets neglected, but it's critical that we really account for and plan for this up front so that we kind of understand, all right, what are the ways that we're going to be assessing and evaluating our process as we go through. I hope that as I've kind of gone through process and what's included, you'll see that this is a little bit different than some of the planning, the work that we've done in the past. We really are taking that broader look. Past effort to really been just KCPS. Here we're really trying to look at the entire system. And so that's different. It's different groups of stakeholders that we need to touch. And so I'm excited to have Samara come up and talk to you about what that's going to look like.
Thank you, Shannon. Good evening, Dr. Bedell, board and cabinet members. My name is Samara Crawford Herrera, and as Shannon mentioned, we'll be talking specifically about community engagement. So while we'll talk more specifically about the identified community engagement strategies for Blueprint 2030, I wanted to spend just a little time talking about our overall approach or our framework for community engagement in general. So this framework, or for practice, is encompassed around 5 levels of engagement and participation. And it's important to mention that no level is more important than another, and that a really balanced engagement strategy should include each level. And so within each level lies a specific goal for engagement. You'll see those goals across relative to each level at the top row of this chart. So for example, the Inform goal talks about providing the public with a balanced, objective, and information to assist them in understanding the problem, alternatives, and/or solutions. And it's important to note that while having this goal is really important, the really critical part is the promise that we make to the community relative to that particular level. And so the promises become the standards by which we're held accountable to the community on. For example, the promise for the community around involvement is that we will work with you to ensure that your concerns and aspirations are directly reflected in the alternatives developed and provide feedback on how community input influence that decision. So success for that involvement level is really about the varying degrees to which we were able to keep that promise. So key stakeholder groups, when we talk about specifically segueing into how we define community or our stakeholder landscape. This landscape is mapped to comprise several key entities, which include students, staff, and community. And as you can see from the chart, these areas are further broken down into key subcategories of particular stakeholder groups. And even within these broad subcategories, it's really important that we further stratify those identities represented to build a holistic engagement strategy. So for the purpose of time, I really wanted to draw your attention to our parents and families entity. And so while it would be really easy to just say current families, what we know is that there are different subcategories of current families. Those engaged and empowered families for whom a survey home via email might be a sufficient consultation strategy may not work for those subcategories of inaccessible by barrier, which language perhaps might be an example, or inaccessible by choice. And those families might distrust, they've had challenging engagement with the district, and so an engagement strategy for them has really got to be tailored specifically for that community. Another key component to determining a proper engagement strategy is to think of each stakeholder group through the lens of influence and impact. So at the top, you talk about strategies for high influence groups, and at the bottom for those high impact groups as well. And they look very different. So for a high influence group, we're really thinking about collaboration and empowerment, as opposed to perhaps a low impact group where consultation and information might suffice. So kind of what I think about as a next stage process is moving from that identification of different stakeholder groups is a methodology that involves questioning the stakeholder priorities. And that helps in really identifying those engagement strategies as well. So we ask these key probing questions that have to be asked and answered in order to move forward. So for example, some of the questions might be about what is important to this particular stakeholder group. What things can they contribute to the project? What are the ways that they might oppose the project? And then that really starts to inform the strategy as well. So this is an entire process that we kind of sit and think very intensively on and think through those answers and those questions before we kind of just embark on any particular strategy. So with that process, it leads to what we kind of think about through the engagement planning process as completing like a sample activity or strategy log. So what you see before you is a sample where the strategy or activity is mapped back to the key stakeholder group based on the steps in the planning process that we've undertaken. And so these logs really kind of encompass some of the broader engagement strategies that KCPS has employed in the past, but it's linked now to those key engagement levels that we expressed, that I talked about earlier. So these are just sample activities that we've engaged in the past. And this particular one is more focused on some of the latter stages of that engagement levels, where you talk about involve and collaboration and empowerment. And as I mentioned before, a great balanced strategy for any initiative involves varying levels of each of these levels. So specific to Blueprint 2030, as Shannon mentioned, phases 1 and 2 do overlap. Will contain significant community engagement, focusing particularly on the engagement levels of inform, consult, involve, and collaborate, with the following activities or strategies that we've identified thus far. And those include our webpage and social media, as I mentioned before in that sample. This really gets to how we inform and how we push out information, to getting a little bit more intentional about collaborating or empowering an advisory committee, listen and learns, community conversations, and things of that matter. And I will turn it back over to Shannon to kind of tie it up with a bow a little bit.
So what are you going to see, coming next? So we're going to continue working on our in-house assessments. So those go back to, I think it's slide 8, the variety of items that we're working on. We've got a couple of third-party RFPs that are those are the ones that are being done, those assessments that are being done by outside groups. So that's some market research work as well as some of the educational assessments. We need to get those out the door so we get those teams working. As Samara mentioned, we've started working on the stakeholder mapping, but we're going to continue that work through phase 1, and that'll be informed by even some of those stakeholder discussions. It's going to be informed by conversations with members of the board. We're working to finalize and issue the Hanover Market Research Survey that we've been talking about for quite some time. So we've got that in good shape. We're talking about getting that out and getting some of the charter schools involved in that as well. And then we're getting a conversation toolkit. And I don't know, actually, I'm going to ask Samara if she'll talk to you about that, because I think that's a new piece that we haven't done yet.
Shannon. So the conversation toolkit is really a comprised group of talking points for how we'll talk about Blueprint 2030. And as Dr. Jones mentioned about the different organizations, neighborhood associations, different groups that you interact with, being able to have a conversation toolkit not only for you, but also for other members of the district to be able to talk specifically about the process that we're engaging in, but then also to solicit feedback. So that becomes part of the engagement strategy as well.
Oh, well, thank you. So we're going to be working to provide you some proposed training dates. I think Samara's talked about providing you maybe some dates when the outreach committee engage. Thank you, on September 9th. So then we're also working to nail down some of the first listen and learn dates. And then obviously we'll be coming back to you to provide school board updates in a variety of ways based off of where we are. We know it's really critical to make sure that you have updates before we're out in the community. And as we have, meetings or conversations set, we'll make sure that those are things that you get in your board packet so that you know where we are, whatnot. But I think as, once we have that conversation toolkit and the training's done, you providing us feedback on the meetings, when you're out talking to community members and the type of feedback that you've received, we'll work with you on that kind of communication feedback mechanism as well. So that's kind of what we've got, and we're open to any questions that you have.
Mr. Hogan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Shannon, thanks for the great work. Samara, thanks for the great work. And I'm sure there was a whole bunch of other people in this
Yes.
room and otherwise that have been part of this. There's clearly a ton of thought put into it, right? Which is awesome. Love it. It's super complex, which is also a good thing because it shows the level of depth at which you guys went into this. But I do have a couple of questions. Shannon, you mentioned educational assessments that we're looking at putting RFPs out. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I want to make sure that what we're not talking about is a systems analysis 2.0 necessarily.
And you're right, we are not. System analysis 2.0 is something else that we're still working on.
Okay.
I think we're talking about doing those regular updates, but the educational assessments are a little bit differently. And Mike, if there's anything that you want to add, I'll take the first stab.
Sure.
But so when we've kind of looked at feedback that we got from the system analysis, when we've looked at our system, and when you look at the retention challenges, where we have really strong achievement, where we don't, we identified some areas that we wanted to take a more critical look. So that's looking at our signature schools. So that could be, are those schools actually like consistent with that theme? How are we doing on retaining students throughout? We know that some of the schools, we have challenges with retention for a variety of reasons. Where are they with equitable achievement? So across free and reduced lunch students, with students of different demographics. So those types of things. Secondary schools, an area of challenge for us with, we've got some small schools. We're not retaining families and students through the 12th grade. And so looking at our secondary programs, are they offering the things that families are wanting? Where are we seeing achievement? Are there certain schools or areas of the community that we're seeing a larger loss to either charters or to surrounding districts? So that's the kind of work that we're diving into. I hope that helps.
Let me just add on. Ultimately, as you saw here with the timeline that we presented, our goal is to bring sound recommendations to this board, and through utilizing these potential outside assessments that would allow for the board with some reliability and validity to feel very comfortable about acting on those recommendations. What I don't want us to, the situation I do not want to enter into is we are making those decisions here that then will receive a tremendous amount of community pushback based on our subjective knowledge of how we think things should be. We need a very objective approach to how we're going to ensure the viability of this school system long term, and that is going to require that we have to look at outside entities to give us the data that we need to make the right decisions in terms of recommendations to the board.
Thank you. So your timeline is fast. It feels very fast. I'm sure it feels a hell of a lot faster for you than it does for me, and it feels really fast for me. So the question becomes, how many people are actively working on this alone?
Do we want to show of hands? Hands.
There's a lot of people internally.
Well, that's good. If
We're
it
doing
was just
some
the two of
great
you raising
team.
your hand,
We're
I
doing
would have
some
freaked
great
out.
team bonding.
All right. Any other questions from that end of the table? Okay. Ms. Wolfsey and then Mr. Barca.
Thank you. So I think I have two comments, and I love seeing this slide here, which kind of outlines where you're trying to gather that data, that information that we're going to use to make what I would term a business decision. And what I want, my first comment is around that we are in a very unique situation as Kansas City Public Schools, because we are trying to hold in one hand being this ed collaboration, bringing the system together, but we are doing so in the most highly competitive market, like in the country. And so those are very conflicting things. So data that is completely just data and objective is going to be essential. So this leads to my next one, which is I've been harping on product offerings. And it's because I come from a marketing background of I'm not sure we actually know what our product sets are within Kansas City Public School and what our market wants from us. Is it traditional? Is it choice? Is it a blend of both? That is essential. And I don't know if I don't want to get down into the nitty gritty, but I'm hoping some of the things here are going to, you'll use third-party researchers that understand product marketing, not just marketing, product marketing. Because if we're going to compete and win, we need to know we have the right product sets that match the market. So that's just my thought.
I know I looked like I was going to, but.
I guess in some of these, as just this particular slide, I'm curious as to, I guess, the ongoing dashboards that maybe can be generated from your entrenched work in some of these specific areas that will help us kind of on the ongoing end, right? Because I'm sure you all have some of this data readily accessible to you. You all just probably don't see it as often every single day. Maybe Dr. Bedell does. He's got this master like spy thing that just like has all the things, but I'm just envisioning. yeah. You can't undisclosed location. But I mean, I just feel like this is a great opportunity for us also to be even more transparent than we already are, and it be like a live dashboard, right? I mean, because some of these areas, I think it would be amazing to see this and have it posted, have it something that we can see and consistently track versus the one time you come to present to us 1 month out of a full year's cycle. So.
Right. I would like to respond to that because I didn't pay Mr. Barker to say that, but data visualization and transparency with our data is something that we really have been working on. It's been going on forever that we've been trying to figure that out. We've been looking at different options. We've been looking at what other school districts are doing. And so that's something that we're kind of doing concurrent with this. And so we don't have all the answers yet. We're getting there. But that's something that we're continuing to work on.
Thank you so much for this presentation, for laying out this whole vision and planning process. At this time, we move to to our policy and governance. And so, Dr. Bedell, I'm going to turn to you for a discussion of the adoption of policies.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. We have the adoption and updating of policies to Board Policy Appendix D, Policy Compliance and Policies AC, D, J, FA, EF, GB, CBB, GCL, JGGA, JHC, and JHCD. We are at this time asking the Board of Directors to adopt new, updated, and/or amended administrative policies and procedures that will be identified as articulated in Appendix D, Policy Compliance.
Second.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded. Is there any debate on the motion? Seeing no debate, the secretary will call the roll.
Ms. Manser?
Yes.
Mr. Abarca?
Yes.
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 Thank you. I do want to make one comment for the audience that if you're just trying to guess what all that alphabet soup could be about, you can actually look up any of these board policies. Many of these come from changes in state statute or other kinds of requirements to us. And if you go to the board leadership section of the website and you go to our board agenda area, to our Assembly, which is our documents system, you can find a tab for board policies and you key in the letter and it'll magically appear. So I want to offer that up to you. At this board business items on our regular business agenda. The first item is the memorandum of understanding between KCPS and the Metropolitan Community Colleges.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As the board and the community has been brought to your attention that the district, along with MCC, is exploring a potential long-term partnership over at the Manual Tech Center, and this is a phased process. What we are doing at this time, we had an opportunity to attend MCC's board meeting last Thursday, I believe. Myself, Mr. Abarca, Mr. Thornton, and Ms. Holliday Scott, and watched the chancellor present to her board what we were working on in terms of collaboration to potentially have Metro Community College partner with us at Manual Tech to really advance the work that we're trying to do with career pathways. And so what we're asking the board at this time to do, which is a no-cost related approval for us to be able to move on with looking at issuance of requests for qualifications for architectural design and construction management services. We are also asking that during this phase it will allow for continued evaluation of the financial viability and assurances for the project, allows for our external financial advisory firm and bond counsel to determine the best debt instrument and long-term agreements for the project. It also allows for final determination of shared student and teacher opportunities and resources. We will continue to provide our board with an update. We had provided in our presentation that we did about a month ago a timeline that articulated what we would discuss, one being at this point October or early October or so, being able to update the board on the consideration for contracts for architect and construction management services. Those at that point will have fee contingencies based on final project approval and final lease agreement approval in January. We would also continue our work, as we stated previously, which will be ongoing with instructional pathways and collaboration and enhanced offerings, and then ultimately coming back to the board sometime in December or January to final project design and cost estimates. It is our full intention that we will continuously keep our board up to date as we continue to have dialogue with MCC. We have made it very clear with MCC that we want to make sure that this is a doable project, and if it isn't, we have that responsibility to our respective boards to keep them updated as to whether we will continue in this dialogue or not. And so at this time, I did want to also share with the board that we have already received a tremendous amount of support from some of the partners, people who are interested in partnering: Train, McCown Gordon, J.E. Dunn, National Institute of Construction Excellence, KC Builder Association, and we also have other different companies and potential partners that have an interest, and we will continue to gather that information as we move forward a potential lease agreement. And so at this time, the administration just simply asking the board to recommend approval of the MOU between KCPS and MCC to explore this potential partnership.
So moved.
Are there any questions regarding the proposed business item of the board? You have questions, Ms. Cortez, related to the approval of this particular item? It would be helpful to hear those now.
I think my primary question, I'll try to kind of condense down to one or two, is I recognize that the document says it's a non-binding MOU, but I think there are some problematic provisions within the document, particularly with regard to the cost exposure on deferred maintenance and capital items. And I guess I would ask for some feedback from your team about the relationship that will occur if when we come back in October, we push back on that being something that has to be resolved in a reasonable manner, because right now it seems like a very open provision that could not only shift substantial costs to KCPS, but not provide an income stream to ensure ongoing capital maintenance. So anytime you agree to a non-binding agreement and then you have to go back and retrade the provisions, it's going to have some impact on the ability to bring the deal to a successful closure. So, I think I'd like to hear some feedback about how you think you would navigate that.
No, I don't know how to work this.
I think I need to.
Yeah. Let me start out with this, is that normally you guys know that when talking about some of the details of a legal document, we do that in close. So let me lead with that. So I don't want to get into a lot of the negotiation, but let me talk to one of the terms, because I understand the point that you make. But if you look on the second page, one of the things it says is the term and termination, and that is that either party may terminate this MOU with or without cause, providing 15 days prior written notice. So it goes to what you said about if there are concerns about some of the other things in here, that if anybody gets uncomfortable, we could always terminate this without cause. So I don't know if that, well, and let me say this too. The thing is that, as you know as an attorney, what you do is you write an agreement for your client. There's a lot of stuff in here that if left probably to just my own design, it would have been a lot simpler. It wouldn't have had a lot of the kinds of other things that we're talking about that may belong in a lease agreement. But my understanding was that folks needed to see something about some of the things that were important to both sides, to even get people to the table to even discuss it. So that would be my thing, is that I think that if any point in time, as Dr. Bedell said, I think all this is giving us the opportunity to just say that we'll explore to see if this is feasible. I think the language is pretty clear and straightforward that at any point in time, if we're uncomfortable with that, we could terminate this.
And at this phase, Ms. Cortez, there are no expenses that will impact the school district. It will give us an opportunity with the concerns that you just raised to go back as we continue to negotiate and say, here's some, as we are trying to really develop this formal MOU, here's some things that right now are of concern to our board that's valid, or here's some concerns that we have. We have the opportunity to continue to have those discussions.
I did just want to note, I actually did request that we discuss it in closed session. We apparently didn't have time. So, that's my only question for now.
Mr. Hogan?
Yeah, so I kind of have an equal concern, but a little bit of a separate one as well, which is, and you kind of touched on this a little bit, Mr. Thornton, around, so I've never seen an MOU or an LOI that goes so deep and gets so specific. I'm used to seeing broad themes that you agree to because of the retrade provision complication that you get into down the road, where your client, if you will, MCC being the client, says, well, wait a minute, you agreed in principle and now you want to renegotiate something that you agreed to previously. So that gives me pause a little bit with an MOU like this, even though knowing that we can term at any point, that's not really the concern, I don't think. I think the concern is it gets harder to go negotiate effectively from our position with an MOU that is very specific.
Dr. Bedell, if you will assist me by identifying for me what you believe are the best advantages of this MOU at this time, and how you propose this MOU will assist us in the continuous exploration and vetting of this project.
Well, as I stated, the phase that we're looking at now is simply to be able to continue to move forward with RFQs and architectural design, so that we can determine what the potential cost would be should we want to proceed any further. But I think absent of us being able to move forward with this, then this potential discussion it dies at this point. I mean, there's nothing else I can articulate outside of, what we've already put in the MOU.
So may I ask a follow-up? So the initial work is the MOU to develop, identify the architectural services and engineering services that will gain us more detailed information on the approximate cost for the project, correct?
That's correct.
And once we receive that information will be brought back to the board with your own assessment of the administrative, the cost, and what kinds of either advantages or hurdles that it may present, and then we will be able to review that before you go to phase 2, which would be the agreement to negotiate a lease and operating agreement.
Yeah, I mean, the board would have to approve us moving forward with us, once it comes back and it says it's X amount of dollars, if I'm not mistaken, we would have to come back to the board for approval before we could even remotely come close to a lease agreement.
Right. We really see this, Bill, help me out, Mr. Thornton. We really see this as a 3-phase. This lets us put those RFQs on the street so that we can find out what we believe the cost of architectural and construction management services would be, and then know when we come back to, if we bring you back a recommendation to engage those services, what our risk and exposure becomes in regards to a step away. And so this lets us put those RFQs on the street. We can't contract those without bringing those back to you. And so that would be phase 2, is that at the October meeting, we would bring back the recommended contracts, if we get there, for architecture and construction management. And that's the point where we'd start being able to delineate some cost risks for the board.
Thank you very much. Ms. Cortez, do you have a follow-up?
Are you okay if I just make a short comment?
Sure.
And it's really this. I appreciate kind of the essentially 8 weeks that would take place between this approval and October 23rd. I think I need to be fair in sharing that I think we would need to flesh out a lot more than the cost of architectural engineering and construction management services before that comes back to the board for approval, because that's not going to be a small number. And so, while I'm concerned about how far away we are from what I see as kind of a workable business agreement based on the framework of this MOU, the more detail that we can be aware of in terms of the exposure that we potentially have would be very helpful. And frankly, in underwriting and understanding the credit of the party that we would be essentially taking all of this debt on for. So I think, understanding that the next 8 weeks aren't where the risk is, but there's a lot of underwriting to do between now and then.
Thank you. Mr. Wasserstrom? I'm sorry, Mr.
That's okay. That's okay. Does the administration have, I've heard the number $12 million, the revamp of the school would be $12 million. Is there a bank that's told us they're going to lend us $12 million? Or do we have that in the budget? I didn't notice it when we passed the budget.
May I respond to that, sir? You're correct. Neither of those are in the budget, and the process would be for a public school. And you're right. We have to be ready when we commit to those architectural agreements to understand all risk ahead, right? So that we're really prepared to bring you that. But the final stage would be entering into a debt instrument that would go out on the public market for sale. Typically, it's not a local bank. It's someone bigger, further away from us. That's who issues public debt to public schools for the most part, based on the credit rating and the financial advisor and general bond counsel reports that are put out into the national market. So we don't have any predetermination as to who our lender might be, but there will be most likely, I would expect 6 to 9 offerings available to us that we would consider for the actual debt instrument when we get there.
Does that require a public vote?
Yes, absolutely.
You expect them to pass it?
The public vote, your vote. It requires your vote.
Oh.
Only the vote of the board. I'm sorry, your vote publicly to authorize the debt.
Mr. Hogan?
So maybe a little bit of a follow-on to Ms. Cortez, which is there an opportunity, and I know there's been a ton of work put into this already by really both organizations, but is there an opportunity to go back and get an MOU that maybe is a bit more acceptable from a framework perspective? Because this one, I mean, in its current state, I'm not sure that I could give a yes vote. I don't think it would prevent it from passing. That wouldn't even necessarily be my goal. It would be a no vote on principle, because I want to see this thing work, and I want to get to a yes, but I'm not sure I'm there at this point. So is there an opportunity to go back to MCC and their board and rethink the way we've structured the MOU in that sort of more traditional, broad theme-based structure, as opposed to getting down into the nitty-gritty in the way this one currently is?
Huh? You can take it, but I'll chime in once you.
It's your prerogative. I mean, because one of the things that we've talked about as we have negotiated with MCC is that you guys have to be comfortable with this. So, because this is a big decision, and there's a lot, just in the MOU, there are a lot of moving parts. So my suggestion would be is that, you know, we try to inform you as much as we can. And right now, I believe that this is just an MOU that says we should explore if it's feasible or not. But if you guys aren't comfortable, you should vote your conscience, and we will respect that.
Yeah, and I agree with that too. I mean, ultimately, you know, we did attend MCC's meeting. Their board moved forward with wanting to go into further exploration, understanding that nothing is signed and sealed at this point. But it, like I said, it is ultimately the will of the board. If the board makes a decision that we don't want to move forward at this point, I mean, that's what we have to live with. I'll have to talk with MCC, but I know that it definitely puts us behind another month. So if we were to move forward with coming with some type of agreement, I mean, it just, at this point, just throws us completely off of our timeline.
Mr. Abarca?
Is there theoretically a situation where, to allow for my colleagues' adjustments as recommended, that we would hold a special meeting that could then keep us on track?
But I guess what I need to figure out is exactly what is it that we're wanting to see happen with the MOU, and I'm not necessarily clear on that. Maybe it's just me at this point. I'm not clear. I'm trying to click off.
I mean, I guess I think Bill understands at least my point, which is getting to an MOU that is more traditional in that it's broad themes. We agree that this is what we want to accomplish with a partnership like this, as opposed to we're going to tell you very specifically, KCPS, how you're going to structure this deal once we get into a binding agreement. And that's what it feels like, is they're sort of tying our hands a little bit. Now, it's non-binding, but it could potentially affect our negotiations with them when we get into a binding agreement, right? Because basically what you're saying is, we agree in principle on this thing and the content within, so that down the road, when you get into the contract negotiation piece itself, everyone has those elements worked through, where we're saying, I'm not sure those elements are in our best interest as a district. So we're trying to get to, at least from my perspective, trying to get to a theme-based sort of MOU that just talks about, here are some of the goals of a partnership like this, and we intend to explore it further. Does that help? Okay.
So I think then, I'm not sure that I have a question, although I think I have a question for my colleagues, because I respect that you have questions and concerns, and I'm trying to match up your questions in regards to how I'm reading this MOU. And so I think one of the challenges that I'm having is not quite understanding the specific nature of the MOU, because as I read through the intention of phase one, which is the seeking out conducting the RFQs for construction management firm, architects and engineers, in order to identify the cost to implement the project on the leased premises for the college district's use. And then that information results in a proposed scope, which will then come back to the board of directors, which at that time will identify what those expenditures, general scope might be, at which time we will be taking a next action on the phase. And so I'm not yet seeing the obligation, the long-term obligation, other than going to the next step of developing the understanding of the proposed expenditure. So if you could clarify, that would be helpful.
Maybe I could pose a question that might unlock this, because maybe I'm reading this and interpreting it in a way that the administration would not. And so my question would be, in section 2B, phase 2, do you view the terms of this MOU as it currently is written to leave you the freedom to negotiate rent payments in excess of debt service and triple net expenses? Because if you do, then everything's still in play. If the question is, how much has that narrowed the frame? And I mean, I would, if you feel like you've got the flexibility to engage that negotiation further, then we are still in a very preliminary place. I may be misreading this document.
What section is it again?
Section 2B1, kind of the A through E. And then
Under phase 2, is that correct? Under phase 2?
And then kind of adding to that the language in section little Roman numeral 8.
Charnessa, do you want to take a swing at that and me help you? She's like, what am I going to do now, right? But I'll help you. I'll help you.
Okay. In negotiating, and I'm trying to be careful as to what I say in open versus what, in this process, we had, as I think as Mr. Thornton had said, that there would be some things that it was very clear when we had generally discuss this. There were concerns about some boards, because we also have an agreement, we have to have an agreement of 2 boards. So each board had a particular things that they wanted to be able to see. But in looking at answering your question, I do believe, I see what's in here. I also know that we did put in some provisions regarding termination. We also put in some provisions regarding being able to address this. Actually, their legal counsel and I are scheduled to start meeting in the next week or so, because we do know that there were a lot of unanswered questions. As what was shared with them is that we anticipated a number of questions from our board. They were anticipating questions from their board as well, because we didn't want to put a ton of information in here. Would it have been more general? That possibly would have been our preference, as from the standpoint that KCPS was coming from. However, we also know sometimes when something is so general, board members are like, well, I need to know a little bit more, because we need to have a little bit more meat to this so that we really know what is going on. So that's where you see a little bit more meat than your typical MOU or traditional MOU. So I do see that there is an opportunity to have further discussion, because there are a lot of questions that had not been answered that we also felt like could be answered in this investigation process, in being able to look at the feasibility of whether, not just the cost aspect of this process, but what is the feasibility of the entire project. So looking at cost, looking at benefit to students, looking at the effects, what would the terms or potential terms of the lease agreement look like? Could we live, both parties live with the outcome of the potential provisions that would be in the lease agreement? And so there were so many questions that we thought we still would potentially have that we could answer during this process, so that there's time. And that's why it's done in a phase instead of everything coming at you at one time. We wanted to be able to somewhat slow the process down to a point that we're still within our timelines, but also slow it down enough that allows us to get information. Of course, you know, as legal counsel, what we do is we want to protect our client. And so there were things that we wanted to be able to have further discussion regarding, so that our board would not be committing to things that would be completely not in its best interest.
Yeah. And let me jump in, and then you can ask the question. Trust, you did a great job. Is that I really don't want to talk about the details of the contract right and open, but as you said, you proposed that it be enclosed. So I don't want to get into those kinds of details, but let me say this in respect, and that is that, I mean, you make a good point, and that is that if two parties can look at the same language differently, then there may not be a meeting of the minds. So if what you're saying that this board is uncomfortable with this language, we can go take another shot at it. But I'd rather not get into the details of the terms of the lease and open. But if your direction to us is that you have a discomfort with the details now, and that it could be interpreted in different ways, and some of those ways could be detrimental to us, even though we tried to put some safeguards in it to give us some escape clause if you didn't find this thing to be something that you could approve, then we'll go back to it. Dr. Bedell talked about it. This has been some tough negotiating, but that's fine. It is what it is. So we could look at taking another swing at it, because we've taken 4 swings at it, and we could come up with something that was more straightforward, maybe closer to some of the background that Dr. Bedell gave you, and just negotiate again and see how we do it. But I really would rather not talk about the exact details in open, right? So.
Okay. Dr. Jones.
Just briefly, I just wanted to comment that I hear my colleagues' concerns, but personally, I feel fairly comfortable with moving forward with this phase. It seems very exploratory, and I'm comfortable with the level of capacity that it seems like the district has to opt out of what may come down the road if those terms are not amenable. So I guess that I just wanted to document that,
Mr. Wasserstrom?
Is there some reason why we can't go into closed session for 5 or 10 minutes and go into the detail right now rather than putting this off to another board meeting?
I think the question I'd want to ask is there something that board members need to be able to ask, right, pertaining to the way the MOU is expressed that necessitates closed, or can you articulate the question publicly in a way that enables us to receive an answer from administration? I think the question is the question about the negotiation, or is the question about the terms as they are written and what the intention of those terms are? Mr. Wasserstrom?
No, I'm just responding. I'm just trying to move the discussion along based on what Nate and Rita said. I mean, their points seem eminently reasonable to me, and it would seem irresponsible to move forward until their points are satisfied.
So my question could be for everyone here on the dais, because I also want to make sure that we have we have clarity as a body of what this MOU pertains to. So can we ask the question in a way, or questions in a way that we can receive answer in open, because do they pertain to the articulation of the agreement?
I don't have any other questions.
But I will say this.
Dell, I want to ask the question, would there be a benefit for the members of the board to have a brief discussion about the MOU as written in closed that would alleviate any remaining concerns?
But maybe I can make a statement that might unlock this, at least temporarily, and that would be for us to approve the MOU, but very clearly say that what should be brought to us on October 23rd is both a proposal for AE and CM services and a revised MOU that addresses our concerns. And that we got 8 weeks to work on that. And maybe we can better articulate those concerns. Okay. But at least we keep the process moving.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you to restate that statement, Ms. Cortez, as a motion for us for consideration of this business item, because I think you've just laid out the motion.
You need the item first, don't you?
You can build the item number in. Yes. So, Ms. Cortez, you're looking at me, can you make a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding between KCPS and MCC, item 020S008-095, with the expectation that, and I'm going to let you fill in the rest.
That two things would occur. Number one, at our next board meeting during closed session, we discuss the legal concerns. And number two, that to enable our legal team to deliver, along with the operations team, a proposal for professional services that would be accompanied by a modified MOU that would address those concerns. It
Well, I apologize. I'm looking to my colleagues. I think what I heard you on the first round is different than the second round. Can I ask a question for clarification? I believe when you made the initial proposal is that your expectation would be that when the administration comes back to us with consideration of services through the RFQ process, that in addition to bringing that back, there would be the a more effective, a more appropriate statement of the next phase of work. Is that what I understood in the first round? Because it sounds like I want to make sure I understand as you make the motion. Are you asking for a renegotiation now, even with this approval, a renegotiation of this current MOU?
I guess what I'm asking for is further clarification of its terms so that we can understand what it is we are committed to. And I mean, I'm circling around this trying to be careful, but our team is going to go through a lot of work to develop both an RFQ and an RFP and bring professional services proposals to us. Without a better understanding on my part, and I only speak for myself, of the terms that we are approving tonight. So there would need to be a discussion about that, and then what might come out of that is we might need to address some of those terms in order to commit to spending a very large amount of money. And so the initial approval is to keep the train moving, but the subsequent approval has to address the concerns.
Okay. I think I understand that. I understand that. Mr. Barca?
I guess just a point of clarification, if we modify at all or amend this in any way, would that not then void out the efforts of MCC's actions? Right, so if we add anything that, some clause or provision or amendment to this motion, wouldn't that not void out?
It creates a new MOU.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't believe that we could modify this one without, and I'm not, making judgment. I'm just saying, if we modify this one, then I think we have to sit back down and renegotiate. Just being candid with MCC, I'm not saying a judgment what you should and shouldn't do, but if we change it, this was what was agreed to. If we change it, which is fine, it's your discretion, then I think we have to sit back down with them and renegotiate a new MOU that we would have to bring back to you and they would have to take back to their board.
So I have I'm just asking for clarification again. Describe to me, Mr. Thornton, the obligation that we undertake financially through the approval of this MOU. And not only the financial obligation that we commit to by virtue of the MOU and the obligation we have with MCCC by virtue of approving this.
Yeah, I can speak to the financials, Linda would have to. I can speak to, like I said, in close to any of the legal terms.
Well, I'm just talking about this MOU.
So this MOU, should we not approve phase 2, which would be those initial contracts that let the work begin, where now dollars are obligated? This MOU has no cost. It does have some restrictions, the way it's written, on the very final agreement, which is important to be noted, will be written by bond counsel, because it will be part of the requirement to get the debt issued. And so what I heard Ms. Cortez saying is that there are some things in there that would be better off for us to try to renegotiate before we get to that phase. But approving this MOU puts no dollars on the table, because you have the opportunity to reject phase 2, which would be then where dollars become actually committed.
And if I'm not mistaken, and, I'm no expert in this area, but when we look at a project life cycle, we're looking at feasibility, conceptual design, cost estimate, and then detailed design and build. It's a process that we go through, and that's what ultimately we would get to. But the board approves in each of those phases. We can't go any further. If the board is saying you all didn't satisfy what I've asked for in order for us to move forward with the next phase where it will incur expense, then we can't move. Why is this coming off? Then we can't move forward with this project. I mean, and that's pretty much the bottom line of where we are with this situation right now. I'd like to.
I second Rita's motion, amendment.
The motion didn't get fully articulated. So I think and we have received advice from council that by approving the motion, we in essence are nullifying this proposal. So we either call the question and vote this motion up or down, and then the board can, if this motion is voted down for this business item, the board can work with administration on the very specific issues that are of concern related to the motion. If the motion moves forward and is approved as currently presented, it is administration's statement to us that that we will have opportunity. We are not obligated to the long-term agreement because there is a next step that will require agreement on this board's part and MCC board's part.
And you're absolutely correct. And ultimately, if the board says, Dr. Bedell, these are issues that need to be addressed, then that's upon us, along with MCC, to sit down and say, here's where our board is. I can tell you right now, we're not going to go any further if we can't come to an agreement on some of these concerns. So let's try to figure out how we can continue to negotiate. That's what happens.
So, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any debate on the motion? Okay. Hearing no debate on the motion, the secretary will call the roll.
Ms. Manser,
Yes.
Mr. Abarca,
Yes.
Ms. Cortez,
Yes.
Mr. Hogan,
No.
Dr. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Wasserstraw,
No.
Ms. Wolfsey,
Yes.
Right. Thank you. The motion passes. The next item of business is Blue Cross Blue Shield of Kansas City.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. At this time, the administration is asking the board to approve this Blue Cross Blue Shield of Kansas City $26 million contract. So just to make sure that we're being very transparent with our board and community, annually, the board is asked to approve the group medical and dental benefits provided to employees of the district. Over the past 3 years, and in partnership with our plan advisors, CBIZ, we have consistently focused on providing high-quality benefit options for employees that include at least one fully paid plan choice. The only medical plan change we have this year is transition of one of our qualified high-deductible plans, which is QHD, to a QHD within the Spira Care program. The district is transitioning our dental program towards a fully self-insured model, with step one this year being a transition to a cost-plus self-insured plan with Blue Cross Blue Shield. While industry standards are a 5% or more increase in premiums, we are happy to recommend plans with no increase in the cost to the employee for employee share or dependent coverage and no increase to the Board of Education. The annual cost of these benefits is included in the approved operating budget for fiscal year 1920. At this time, the administration recommends approval of the 2020 medical and dental plan.
Are there any questions related to this business item? Seeing no questions, it would be in order to have a motion to approve the group medical and dental insurance.
So moved.
Second.
It is moved and seconded. Is there any debate on the motion? Hearing no debate, the secretary will call the roll.
Ms. Manser?
Yes.
Mr. Abarca?
Yes.
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 Dr. Jones? Yes. Mr. Wasserstrom? Yes. Ms. Wolfson?
Yes.
There is a majority in favor, and the business item has been approved. The next item of business is the Children's Center for the Visually Impaired.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At this time, the Center for the Visually Impaired is a state-approved private agency that has provided services to KCPS exceptional education students for many years. The estimated annual cost of $492,271 is included in the previously approved 2019 operating budget. It is at this time that the administration recommends approval of the service agreement for FY20 with the Children's Center for Visually Impaired.
Are there any questions on the business item Children's Center for the Visually Impaired? Hearing no questions, may I receive a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It is moved and seconded. Is there any debate on the motion? Hearing no debate, the secretary will call the roll.
Ms. Manser?
Yes.
Mr. Abarca?
Yes.
Ms. Cortez?
Yes.
Mr. Hogan?
Yes.
Dr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Wasserstrom?
Yes.
Ms. Wolfson?
Yes.
The motion is passed. The next item of business is the Rainbow Center for Communicative Disorders.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Rainbow Center for Communicative Disorders is a state-approved private agency that has provided services to KCPS exceptional education students for many years. This agreement set the cap amount for 2019-20 school year at $5,760, which is included in the approved operating budget for 1920. Based on satisfactory performance, the administration recommends approval of the service agreement.
Are there any questions on this business item? Hearing no questions, it would be in order to receive a motion to approve the Rainbow Center for Communicative Disorders.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any debate on the motion? Hearing none. The secretary will call the roll.
Ms. Manser?
Yes.
Mr. Abarca?
Yes.
Ms. Cortez?
Yes.
Mr. Hogan?
Yes.
Dr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Wasserstrom?
Yes.
Ms. Wolfson?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes. The next item of business is the Sherwood Center.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Sherwood Center is a state-approved private agency that has provided services for KCPS exceptional education students for many years. This service agreement set the cap amount for the 2019-20 school year at $1,116,856, which is also included in the approved 2019 budget. Administration recommends approval of the service agreement.
Are there any questions regarding the business item for the Sherwood Center? It would be in order to receive a motion to approve.
So moved.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any debate on the motion? Hearing no debate, the secretary will call the roll.
Ms. Manser,
Yes.
Mr. Abarca,
Yes.
Ms. Cortez,
Yes.
Mr. Hogan,
Yes.
Dr. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Wasserstrom,
Yes.
Ms. Wolfsey.
Yes.
The motion passes. The next item of business is Cornerstones of Care.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Cornerstones of Care is a state-approved private agency that has provided services for KCPS exceptional education students. This services agreement is set in the amount of $800,000 for the 2019 school year and is also included in the approval of the 2019 budget. The administration is asking the board to take action on this service agreement.
Thank you. Are there any questions on this business item? Hearing no questions, it would be in order to receive a motion.
So moved.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any debate on the motion? Hearing no debate, the secretary will call the roll.
Ms. Manser,
Yes.
Mr. Abarca,
Yes.
Ms. Cortez,
Yes.
Mr. Hogan,
Yes.
Dr. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Wasserstrom,
Yes.
Ms. Wolfsey.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes. The next item of business is educational-based services.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The district has had an agreement for services with educational-based services and now a renewal agreement with EBS in the amount of $2,085,000 to provide therapist staff services specifically for the KCPS Exceptional Education Department. The cost of this renewal agreement is approved in the 2019-20 budget. The administration at this time is asking the board to recommend approval of the service agreement for FY20.
Thank you. Are there any questions on this business item? Hearing no questions, it's in order to receive a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any debate on the motion? Hearing no debate, the secretary will call the roll.
Pardon me, Ms. Manser,
Yes.
Mr. Abarca,
Yes.
Ms. Cortez,
Yes.
Mr. Hogan,
Yes.
Dr. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Wasserstrom,
Yes.
Ms. Wolfsey.
Yes.
The next item of business is the Niles Home for Children.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Niles Home for Children is a state-approved private agency that has provided service to KCPS Exceptional Education for many years. This agreement set cap in the amount of $336,700 for the 2019-20 school year and is also included in the approved FY20 budget. The administration is asking the board to take action to approve this service agreement.
Are there any questions about the business item Niles Home for Children? Seeing no questions, it would now be in order to receive a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any debate on the motion? Hearing no debate, the secretary will call the roll.
Ms. Manser,
Yes.
Mr. Abarca,
Yes.
Ms. Cortez,
Yes.
Mr. Hogan,
Yes.
Dr. Jones, Mr. Wasserstrom,
Yes.
Ms. Wolfsey.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes. The next item of business is Bruner Contracting Company.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Upon earlier project approval by the Board of Education, bids were released for this renovation project. The project will include additional workspace for the IT department, creation of a private suite for the Human Resources Department, and additional office space on the first floor. 2 bids were received, and Bruner Contracting Company, LLC, offered the lowest and best bid. The bid provides for 10% WBE participation. The administration recommends approval of the contract and total budget allocation of $1,152,500 from the Capital Projects Fund to allow the project to begin.
Are there any questions regarding this business item?
Yes. If I recall correctly, when this project was approved, the budget that we approved was $1 million. Could you just give us a little bit of insight into kind of the scope changes or I understand the marketplace, but the scope changes that may have impacted that as well?
No scope change. It was all marketplace and bidding.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other questions about this business item? Hearing no questions, it would be in order to receive a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any debate on the motion? Hearing no debate. The secretary will call the roll.
Ms. Manser,
Yes.
Mr. Abarca,
Yes.
Ms. Cortez,
Yes.
Mr. Hogan,
Yes.
Dr. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Wasserstrom,
Yes.
Ms. Wolfsey.
Yes.
Bruner Contracting Company is approved. The next item of business is MTS Contracting for site improvements at the Franklin Operations Center.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Upon earlier project approval by the Board of Education, bids were released for this project. The project will allow for creation of a permanent operations center for the facilities construction, custodial, child nutrition services, and security departments, in addition to some community use space. 2 bids were received, and MTS Contracting, Inc. offered the lowest and best bid. This bid includes no MBE or WBE participation. The administration is recommending approval of the $313,960 contract to allow the project to begin upon signature.
Are there any questions regarding this business item?
Yes.
Mr. Wasserstrom, go ahead.
What steps, if any, were taken to solicit MBE or WBE bids on this?
We specifically, as we issued the RFPs and held our pre-bid meeting, made certain that we invited all MBE, WBE businesses in this line that are registered with us and have done business with us. And when we did our walkthrough for the project, we talked with our potential bidders about the importance of trying to include those inside their bids. We just simply ended up with no bids from any MBE, WBEs, or that were inclusive in part.
While you're up, can I ask you a quick question? If I recall correctly, this project is a multiple contract project.
Yes,
With this contract, are we still within budget?
we are.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions on this business item? Hearing no questions, it would be in order to receive a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any debate on the motion? Hearing no debate, the secretary will call the roll.
Ms. Manser,
Yes.
Mr. Abarca,
No.
Ms. Cortez,
Yes.
Mr. Hogan,
Yes.
Dr. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Wasserstrom,
Yes.
Ms. Wolfsey.
Yes.
The motion passes. The next item of business is Curriculum Associates.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is the first renewal of our agreement with Curriculum Associates, which provides iReady math and reading, diagnostic, a universal screener, and intervention supports used to close achievement gaps. This contract allows for the annual licenses for students and faculty. The annual cost of $578,924.50 is included in the previously approved operating budget. The administration recommends approval of this renewal agreement.
Are there any questions about this business item? Hearing no questions, it would be in order to receive a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any debate on the motion? Hearing no debate, the secretary will call the roll.
Ms. Manser,
Yes.
Mr. Abarca,
Yes.
Ms. Cortez,
Yes.
Mr. Hogan,
Yes.
Dr. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Wasserstrom,
Yes.
Ms. Wolfsey.
Yes.
The next item of business is School Smart KC grant.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This 3-year grant agreement totaling $780,000 will help provide services for the K-2 inclusion model initiated this fiscal year. Services will include additional staffing of special education teachers, professional development and training materials, and technology for all students in these classrooms. The administration recommends approval of this grant agreement.
Are there any questions on this business item? Ms. Cortez?
Quick question for Ms. Quinley. I noticed in this agreement, and it may not be your question, that there's an obligation for kind of funding inversion through the 3-year agreement that I just want to know from a budgetary standpoint, do we have capacity to take those obligations on? We're agreeing to that.
This is Dr. Shepard's good work, so she may have something to add. But yes, what we're doing because of this is this grant is covering some things you'd previously authorized in the operating budget, which allows us to take funds out of the operating budget, set them aside for other purpose. So we're pretty comfortable that we're going to be able to ebb and flow that to the end of the agreement.
Great, thank you very much. And Dr. Shepard, this really is a great program, so thank you for bringing it to fruition.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions on this business item? Hearing none, it will be in order to receive an approval.
So moved.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any debate on this motion? Hearing no debate, the secretary will call the roll.
Ms. Manser,
Yes.
Mr. Abarca,
Yes.
Ms. Cortez,
Yes.
Mr. Hogan,
Yes.
Dr. Jones, Mr. Wasserstrom,
Yes.
Ms. Wolfsey.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion has been approved. The next item of business is the contract for Head Start services.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Mid-America Regional Council is a recipient of a federal grant for Head Start programming in our area. As a Head Start provider, KCPS has an annual agreement with MARC to be a sub-recipient of these federal grant dollars as reimbursement for allowable Head Start staffing and services provided. This $4,728,476.87 agreement for November 2019 through October 2020 is an annual agreement for funds and will be amended into the 2019-20 budget. The administration recommends acceptance and approval of the MARC Head Start provider agreement.
Are there any questions regarding this business item? Hearing no questions, it would be in order to receive a motion.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any debate on the motion? Hearing no debate, the secretary will call the roll.
Ms. Manser,
Yes.
Mr. Abarca,
Yes.
Ms. Cortez,
Yes.
Mr. Hogan,
Yes.
Dr. Jones, Mr. Wasserstrom,
Yes.
Ms. Wolfsey.
Yes.
Thank you. The next item of business is the contract for early Head Start expansion services.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to make sure I'm reading the right one. Okay. The Mid-America Regional Council is the recipient of a federal grant for Head Start programming in our area. KCPS has an annual agreement with MARC to be a subrecipient of these federal grant dollars as reimbursement for allowable infant and toddler Head Start programming at Central High School. This $330,428.11 agreement for November 2019 through October 2020 is an annual agreement for funds and will be amended into the 2019-20 budget. The administration recommends acceptance and approval of the MARC Early Head Start Provider Agreement.
Are there any questions on this business item? Hearing no questions, it would be in order to receive a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any debate on the motion? Hearing no debate, the secretary will call the roll.
Ms. Manser,
Yes.
Mr. Abarca,
Yes.
Ms. Cortez,
Yes.
Mr. Hogan,
Yes.
Dr. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Wasserstrom,
Yes.
Ms. Wolfsey.
Yes.
The motion has passed. The next item of business is ACE Electronics.
Thank you, Madam Chair. ACS Electronics Contract. KCPS's security systems require outside contractor support for maintenance, repair, and monitoring services relating to security and fire alarm systems. After a bidding process that resulted in 4 responses, ACS Electronics was determined to be the lowest and best bidder for these services. Funding for the $150,000 estimated annual contract total is included in the approved 2019-20 operating budget. At this time, the administration recommends approval of the ACS contract from the board.
Are there any questions on this business item?
Yes,
Mr. Wasserstrom?
were any bids received from MBE or WBE contractors?
I was looking for Dr. Cordoba, as safety and security is his department. I believe that is a no. Major Harris, is that correct? We don't have any local service providers that are MBE or WBE in this specific area related to security and fire alarm monitoring.
Are there any additional questions on this item? Hearing no questions, it would be in order to receive a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any debate on the item? Hearing no debate, the secretary will call the roll.
Ms. Manser,
Yes.
Mr. Abarca,
Yes.
Ms. Cortez,
Yes.
Mr. Hogan,
Yes.
Dr. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Wasserstrom,
Yes,
Ms. Wolfsey.
Yes.
The next item of business is the approval of items on our consent agenda. It would be in order to receive a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda, items 1 through 43.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any debate on the motion? Okay. Hearing no debate, the secretary will call the roll.
Ms. Manser,
Yes.
Mr. Abarca,
Yes.
Ms. Cortez,
Yes.
Mr. Hogan,
Yes.
Dr. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Wasserstrom,
yes,
Ms. Wolfsey.
Yes.
Thank you. The items on the consent agenda have been approved. With this, that concludes this evening's business meeting of the Kansas City Public Schools Board of Directors. The general business meeting is now closed. So are we going to stay?